The best refrigerator I have ever owned cost me nothing, uses no electricity, has no motor and no door seal to replace, and it sits under the floor of my house in Norway. There is a hatch in the corner of the back hall with a brass ring set flush into the boards. You lift it, you go down 7 steps, and the temperature drops 30 degrees before your head is below the level of the ground. It smells like earth and apples down there, not a musty smell, a clean, cold, mineral smell like the inside of a stone church in August. Along the left wall are wooden crates of potatoes, skins gone tough and papery, no green on them, no sprouts. In the middle of the floor is a wooden box the size of a footlocker filled with damp sand, and standing upright in that sand, packed shoulder to shoulder like books on a shelf, are about 40 pounds of carrots. I pulled them out of the garden in October. It is now the second week of March. I brought one up an hour ago, rinsed it under the tap, and ate it standing at the sink, and it snapped when I bit it. That carrot is 5 months old. It has not been in a bag or in a truck or under a mist sprayer in a grocery store. It cost me a packet of seed, and it has been sitting in wet sand in the dark, doing nothing at all, staying alive. Now think about the last bag of carrots you bought. Think about the ones you found at the back of the crisper drawer, gone limp and bendy with that white bloom on them. You paid for those. You threw them out. And I want to tell you that the reason they went soft is not that you forgot about them. The reason is that your refrigerator is the wrong machine for the job. This is the strange part. The most expensive appliance in most American kitchens is very good at 4 things and bad at nearly everything else. It is built from milk, meat, leftovers, and a few days of lettuce. It is built cold, and it is built dry, and dry is what kills a carrot. What I have under my floor is not colder than your refrigerator. It is warmer. It is also wetter and darker, and it never opens and closes 20 times a day. Those 4 differences are the whole of it, and every one of them can be reproduced in an American house without pouring a single foot of concrete. My father dug that cellar out with a spade and a wheelbarrow in 1938, before the house had wiring. He was not being quaint. He was being a man with 6 mouths and 1 growing season.
4 conditions. Learn them, and you can store food anywhere.
Cold, but above freezing. Most root vegetables want 32 to 40 degrees. Potatoes are the exception, and they are the one everybody gets wrong. They want 40 to 45, warmer than the rest. Store a potato at 34 degrees, and the starch inside it begins converting to sugar. It will not rot. It will taste sweet and wrong, and it will fry up dark and bitter, and you will blame the potato. Damp, which is the part your kitchen cannot do. A good cellar sits at 85 to 95% humidity. Your refrigerator runs around 30 to 40% because the cooling coil is constantly pulling water out of the air and dumping it down a drain. That is deliberate. It keeps your milk carton from sweating and your freezer from icing. It also means every uncovered carrot, beet, parsnip and turnip in that box is slowly drying out from the moment you put it in. The limp carrot is not spoiled, it is dehydrated. Dark, because light does 2 things to a potato, and both of them are bad. It wakes the eyes and starts the sprouting, and it turns the skin green. Green skin means solanine, which is a natural toxin the plant makes, and it tastes bitter for a reason. Light also breaks down the vitamins in most vegetables faster than the cold preserves them. Still, which nobody talks about. A cellar door opens twice a week. Your refrigerator door opens 24 times a day, and every time it does, a slug of warm kitchen air rolls in across everything on the shelves, and the machine has to pull the temperature back down. That swing back and forth is harder on stored produce than a steady temperature 5 degrees higher would be. Cold, damp, dark, still. My cellar hits all 4 by accident, because it is a hole in the ground with a stone wall and a wooden hatch. The earth around it never freezes and never warms above the low 40s, because 6 feet down, the ground does not care what the sky is doing. That is the real machine, by the way, not the cellar, the earth.
A cellar is just a way of borrowing the temperature that already exists under your feet, and it works exactly as well in Minnesota or Pennsylvania or upstate New York as it does here, because the physics does not know where the border is. One more piece of it, and this one costs nothing but attention. Keep the fruit away from the vegetables. Apples and pears give off ethylene gas as they ripen. Ethylene is what tells a potato that spring has arrived and it is time to sprout. Put a crate of apples next to a crate of potatoes in a closed room, and you will have a crate of sprouted potatoes by January, and you will never work out why. In my cellar, the apples sit under the far window in their own box, wrapped one by one in newspaper, and the potatoes sit at the opposite wall. Nothing in Norway was ever more important to keep than the potato, and that is not a figure of speech. There is an old line in our school books that the potato mattered more to the Norwegian people than the Constitution did. Consider what that claims. The Constitution was signed in 1814. It is the founding document of the country, celebrated with flags and brass bands and children marching every 17th of May. And still, the school books will tell you that the thing that actually changed how a family lived in the years right after was a South American tuber that grows in bad soil at high latitude and keeps all winter in a hole in the ground. The potato came to Europe in the 16th century, and Norwegian farmers wanted nothing to do with it for 200 years. It was foreign, nobody was sure which part you ate, and people who guessed wrong got sick. What broke the resistance was a group of parish priests, and they are still called the potato priests here. The best known of them was Peder Harbo Hertzberg, born in 1728, dead in 1802, a vicar out on the island of Bomlo on the west coast. He is said to have carried his first seed potatoes home in his hat after seeing them grown in Hardanger. He planted them at the rectory, he grew them for years, he worked out what actually happened in Norwegian soil at Norwegian latitude, and in 1774 he published a book of instructions for farmers on planting and using the potato, written from his own experience. He was still alive and active enough in 1814 that his son sat in the first Norwegian parliament. He was not alone. Abraham Peel, Jens Rinning, Jacob Nikolai Wills, men who preached on Sunday and demonstrated hilling and harvest on Monday, on the theory that a starving parish is not much of a congregation. Then the timing turned savage. During the Napoleonic Wars, the British blockaded Denmark-Norway, and 3/4 of the grain this country ate came in by sea from Denmark. The ships stopped. The harvests failed in the same years, in a stretch of unusually cold seasons. People starved in the villages along this coast within living memory of my great-grandparents. What stood between a household and that was a potato patch and a cellar. Grain has to be threshed and milled, and it comes once a year from somewhere else. Potatoes came out of your own ground, yielded heavily in poor soil and a short season, and then sat in the dark under your floor for 8 months, feeding you a little at a time. That is why the hole in the ground is not a hobby here, and never was. Every farmhouse of any age in this country has one, or had one, and the reason is not thrift or charm. It is that this country learned in one hard generation what happens to people who can only eat what arrives from somewhere else. I think about that when I lift the hatch. My grandfather was born 11 years after the last real hunger year in this district.
The method is old, and it is simple enough to write on the back of a seed packet. Carrots, beets, parsnips, turnips, and rutabagas go into damp sand. Do not wash them. Brush the loose dirt off with your hand and leave the rest, because washing opens the skin and starts the rot. Cut the greens back to about 1 inch above the crown and leave the root tip alone. Then stand them upright in a box of moist sand or damp sawdust so that no two of them touch each other, because where they touch is where they go first. Sand that feels like a wrung-out sponge is right. 4 to 6 months at 40 degrees is normal, and mine go longer. Potatoes get cured before they get stored, and this is the step nearly everyone skips. Dig them and leave them somewhere dark at 45 to 60 degrees for 10 days to 2 weeks.
That period toughens the skin into something that will hold up for half a year. Then move them to the cold and keep them in the dark and keep them dry. Not in sand, not in plastic. A slatted wooden crate or a paper sack with the top rolled open. Apples get wrapped, one at a time, in newspaper and boxed. The wrapping does two jobs. It slows the moisture loss, and when one apple rots, the paper keeps the rot from spreading to the 6 apples touching it. A hard, late variety will hold 5 months or more. A soft, early one will give you 2, and there is no method that changes that. Cabbages and turnips go somewhere separate if you have it, and this is a practical warning rather than a theoretical one. They smell, and the smell travels through a house. Onions and garlic want the opposite of everything above. Cool and dry, 50 to 60 degrees, in a mesh bag with air around them, and nowhere near the potatoes. Now the layout, which is where most people go wrong once they have got the temperature right. Warm, dry air rises and cool, wet air sinks, so the top shelf near the ceiling is the driest and warmest spot in the room, and the floor by the far wall is the coldest and dampest. Squash and onions go high, roots and cabbage go low. Apples go in their own corner as far from the potatoes as the room allows. And then the one habit that separates people who do this successfully from people who try it once and give up. Go down once a week with a flashlight and take out anything that has started to go. One rotting potato in a crate will take the 8 around it within a month, and rot spreads by contact and by the moisture it releases. 2 minutes a week. That is the entire maintenance schedule on a machine that runs for 8 months without electricity. I keep a notebook on a nail by the hatch. The date I put things down and the date the last of them came up. 50 years of it. My handwriting has gotten worse and the carrots have not changed at all.
Most American houses cannot do what my house does, and I would rather say so plainly than sell you a shovel. If your basement is finished and heated, it is a room, not a cellar, and it will sit at 68 degrees all winter. If your house is on a concrete slab, as most houses built in the American South and Southwest are, there is nothing under your floor at all. And in a climate where the ground never gets properly cold, Florida, coastal Texas, Southern California, the earth is not going to lend you 40 degrees no matter how deep you dig. Root cellaring is a cold climate method. That is not a small caveat, that is half the country. An unheated attached garage is the substitute people usually reach for, and it works in exactly one situation, when it stays between 32 and 50 degrees and does not swing wildly. In a Minnesota January, that garage will hit 10 below and freeze everything in it into a solid, ruined block. A potato that has been frozen and thawed turns to gray slime. Put a thermometer out there and watch it for a full winter before you trust it with 100 pounds of food. The other honest limit is what this method covers. Roots, tubers, hard squash, cabbage, apples, pears, onions, that is the list. Nothing here works for meat, dairy, eggs, or anything cooked. And I do not want anyone hearing an old man talk about the good old days and deciding to keep a ham under the porch. Cold storage of produce is a food safety practice with a long record behind it. Improvised cold storage of animal products is how people get very sick. On the money, let me be careful, because the round numbers get thrown around and they do not all mean the same thing. The Environmental Protection Agency's own estimate puts American consumer food waste at about $728 a person a year, which comes to roughly $2,900 for a household of 4. The Department of Agriculture's older and more conservative figure for a family of 4 is $1,500. Fresh produce is the largest category of what gets thrown out of home kitchens by weight, which is the part that concerns us here. What I will not tell you is that a box of sand saves you $2,000 a year. It does not. If you are 2 people who buy a 5-pound bag of potatoes, a bag of carrots, and a bag of apples every week, and throw away a third of it, you are losing something on the order of $100 to $200 a year on those items. Storing them properly gets most of that back and gets you better food. That is the real size of it, and it is worth doing, and it is not a fortune. The green potato warning is worth repeating because it is the one real danger in this whole business.
Green skin or sprouts mean solanine has formed. Cut deep or throw it out. Do not scrape a green potato and cook it anyway. And the last thing that does not transfer. My cellar was dug by a man who assumed his son would use it. It is under the house he built, on ground he owned, in a country where a house stays in a family for 100 years. If you are renting or if you are downsizing next spring, you are not going to dig anything. A plastic tote in the coldest corner of an unheated basement is not romantic, and it will never be in a photograph. And it will keep carrots for 4 months all the same.
Before you buy anything, find the cold corner. A maximum thermometer costs $12 to $20 at any hardware store, and it records the coldest and warmest point it reached since you last reset it. Put it in the corner of the basement farthest from the furnace, or on the floor of an unheated back closet, or in the garage, and read it every few days for 2 weeks in the fall. You are looking for something that stays between 32 and 50 and does not swing. Most houses have one spot like that, and most people have never identified it. Then the sandbox, which is the cheapest useful thing in this whole episode. A 50-pound bag of play sand runs about $6 to $8 at any big box hardware store. A 20-gallon plastic tote is $10 to $15. Dampen the sand until it holds together when you squeeze it and falls apart when you open your hand. Stand your carrots and beets in it upright, unwashed, tops trimmed to 1 inch. That is under $25 for a box that will hold 30 or 40 pounds of roots through the winter, and you can lift the lid on it in February. Buy your potatoes the way a farmer sells them, not the way a supermarket sells them. In October, at a farm stand or a farmer's market in most of the country, a 10 or 20 pound sack of storage potatoes runs well under $1 a pound, often half of what the same weight costs in 5-pound grocery bags across the winter. Ask for a late storage variety and ask whether they have been cured. Get them into the dark at 40 to 45 degrees and take a couple of dollars off the price of every meal you make between January and April. Move the apples. Whatever you are already doing with apples, take them out of the crisper drawer and off the counter next to the onion basket. Wrap the ones you mean to keep in newspaper, box them, and put them in the cold corner as far from the potatoes as the room allows. This one costs nothing, and it is the single most common mistake. Buy a cheap flashlight and hang it on a nail by the door of wherever you have set all this up. Once a week, go through and pull anything soft. 2 minutes. And if you want the whole thing at its simplest, do this and nothing else. 1 plastic tote, 1 bag of sand, 1 bag of carrots from the farm stand in October in the coldest corner you own. In March, take one out and wash it and eat it standing at the sink. You will taste the difference immediately, and after that, nobody has to talk you into any of the rest of it. My father filled that cellar the first autumn the house had walls, before there was glass in the upstairs windows. He put down potatoes and carrots and a barrel of salted herring, and then he sat on the hatch and smoked, because the winter was no longer a question that needed answering. That is what the hole in the ground is really for. Not the money, the quiet.